Howdy, folks. I want to talk about a few things today. We're going to break this up into multiple videos, but I want to talk about what a NOC, a SOC, and a SIEM is. So, a NOC stands for Network Operation Center. SOC stands for Security Operations Center, and SIEM stands for Security Information Event Management. Sometimes you have a SIEM in a SOC, and sometimes you have a SOC in a NOC. And I'm not trying to make a rhyme here. It just depends on the scale and what you need done. But we're going to break those up into separate videos because they're separate topics. What's a NOC? A NOC is a Network Operations Center. This can be the size of a building. It can be the size of a warehouse. It can be the size of a football field. A Network Operations Center typically houses dozens, hundreds, thousands of racks filled with even more servers, data, storage, multiple network connections coming in from multiple internet service providers, dozens, hundreds of routers, perhaps thousands of switches. A NOC is a significant undertaking to manage. They manage power infrastructure. They manage power redundancy. They manage generators. They manage fuel. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, we would have our own generators. In Iraq, we actually ran off the generators. In Afghanistan, we had base power, but it wasn't reliable, so we still needed the generators as failovers. And in both situations, we had more than one generator because, as you may have heard me say a couple times during these videos, one is none. So if you need it to absolutely work, one is not an acceptable answer for how many you have. So back to NOC. They manage the power. They manage the network bandwidth. They manage the network connectivity. They monitor everything that is going on inside the space. Air conditioning, heating. When you have a NOC set up, you have a hot aisle and a cold aisle. A hot aisle is where the back end of all of the equipment is, and the front aisle is the cold aisle where all the front end of all the equipment is, because all of that equipment is designed to suck the cold air in and blow the hot air out the back. There's complicated metrics and detection and monitoring, not just for heat or cold, but for humidity. Humidity can be a danger. The air conditioning can create condensation. You can have all sorts of strange impacts from the heating and the cooling. Your environment can be a huge situation. In Iraq, we would have sandstorms, as crazy as you see on TV. The sandstorms in The Mummy or the sandstorms in any of those other, that's what they look like. Just engulf everything. The sun, blot the sun out. But those particulate sensors that are super, super fine in detecting advanced particulate in the air, because particulate inside a data center can be damaging for equipment. Too much dust, too much buildup sucked into those servers can shorten the lifespan of equipment. Why should you blow out equipment? Well, because it shortens the lifespan. It traps heat in and it creates a layer and a barrier, and eventually your equipment will fail. Also, that's where the condensation buildup happens, because it has to have something to build up on. So you can be sucking in moist particulate. The sandstorms would just send those sensors to the moon. We would have just particulate ratings in the tens of thousands per millimeter or cubic foot, whatever it was. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But there's particular sensors on all sorts of equipment, and they monitor all of it. They monitor your network cards, they monitor your servers, they monitor your switches, they monitor your racks, they monitor the traffic, they monitor the load, they monitor everything. And most likely, your organization doesn't touch a NOC directly. You're renting a service from someone who then houses in a NOC, who then houses in a network operations center where all of the servers are. Maybe it's Google, maybe it's AWS, maybe it's Azure, maybe it's another provider. We've got some great providers down the street here in Austin. Rackspace is a very well-known network operations center, and they have a lot more in their services that they offer. if you have a server and you want to have it hosted somewhere, also sometimes called a colo or a colocation, you can literally say, here's the money, host my server there, give me an IP address, give me a spot in your rack on your network, and poof, they will manage it for you. The services that they provide, they won't manage that particular server for you. Some will, that's a different cost. There's lots and lots of services you can buy depending on what services that they want to sell you. So, are you using a NOC? Probably. Your EMR, your website, your email, something somewhere probably goes through a NOC, and they manage and maintain the infrastructure, getting as close to that magical 4 nines, meaning 99.99 of uptime, so that you have maybe minutes of outage a year. It's a rough task. They usually have just huge monitors with everything being monitored on the screen. It is an adventure to work there. They test, they manage maintenance windows, they manage outage windows. They try to do everything that they possibly can to make sure that the customer knows the status of the equipment whenever they need it, and that they can assist and get access to that equipment when requested. Not all NOCs are the same. Typically, you're not going to need to worry about managing your own NOC until you are a significant size organization. And even then, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just pay Amazon tens of millions of dollars a month. I know companies that do, because they don't want to deal with the staffing. They don't want to deal with the power. They don't want to deal with the management, the maintenance, the overhaul. Am I going to have a location A and a location B? With Amazon, you can at least say, I want to be on the East Coast and West Coast simultaneously. Hit a couple buttons and your data migrates. Depending on the amount of data, it can take different time frames for that migration to happen. But a NOC is a massive organization piece for all of us. We're all touching a NOC in some way, shape, or form. The mere fact that you're connecting to the internet, you're going through a NOC somewhere. Somehow you're interacting with it. So understanding that when a data center goes down, really that means a NOC went down somewhere. Some internet connection went down, some rack went down, some power went down, something happened, and there's probably a team of people running around like ants trying to fix it so that you can have your services back up and running. Later, we'll talk about a SOC and SIEM and go into those details so that you have some benefit